In this video, I'm going to make a Django website backed up by a database. So the data is going to be coming from a database table, and I'm going to go from start to finish and include many features that are important in a Django website, like template inheritance, URL parameters, things of that nature. And the context for this particular problem is going to be a sample exam problem. So even if you're not in a college course taking a course related to Python and Django, you could follow along with what I'm doing to see all of the code that it takes to create a website starting from scratch. So let me start off by showing the sample problem. So this sample problem says upload your stuff at the end of the exam, and notice it's 4 pages long, the description. And so the first thing to do is probably skim the entire exam, read the entire exam to see what it is that you're supposed to do. So it starts off saying that you're going to create a superhero database. So after you've read through the whole thing, you'd come to the conclusion, oh, I'm going to be storing information like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Goku, etc. We're going to need a project called Heroes, and there's going to be an application in there called Heroes App. All right, scrolling down for some other sections. If we read through this in detail, which I don't want to do while we're on a video because that would be boring, you'll see that there are 3 models, meaning that there are 3 tables. And if you read about them carefully, you'll realize that heroes have superpowers, and the heroes are also created by a publisher. And if I scroll down farther, it's got information about routes, and there's 4 bullet points. It's got information about templates, and there are 4 of those. So again, there's an implication here that there's going to be 4 different web pages here, HTML pages called templates. There's going to be some CSS. And because there's CSS, it makes you think, ooh, and it actually tells you right here, you need to inherit from the base.html page when displaying these other pages. So that's also flavoring the thing here. So we know the big picture is it's going to be about a particular table of heroes or a database of heroes, but there's several different ways we can display information about those heroes, and they all should have essentially the same header and footer using template inheritance using this CSS file. And if we come down here, it tells us that there's some additional information. This is more information about each of the template pages and what happens in each of the template pages. So some greater detail here. And you would pick that up if you read this all super carefully. It says you need an admin page to update the data in the tables, in the models. And then you need to upload it at the end of the exam. Okay, so what I should take from this is that first off, there's a lot of complexity, and I got to break this down piece by piece. But the key features I'm going to be aware of are that there are 4 web pages or templates, and there's some greater detail about them right here. I'm going to need some headers and footers in them. In other words, template inheritance. I'm going to need to set things up with some static assets, meaning a CSS file. And we're going to have 4 routes associated with those templates. We're going to have 3 tables, and we're going to have a project. Okay, so we have even though we haven't read all of the instructions in perfect detail, we've got a pretty good idea of what it is that we're going to be accomplishing when all is said and done. At the very least, we hopefully remember that there's 4 web pages in this, and we're going to need to build the functionality into them. Okay, first thing it says is create a project called Heroes. Now, I prefer to use Docker for all of my programming because that way I can always use the latest versions of things like Django and Python, and I don't have to install things permanently to my local computer. One way I could do this is I could use Docker locally on my desktop, or because some people can't install Docker on their local computers, I'm going to use Cloud9, one of the services in AWS. And so let's go ahead and do that first. So here's an AWS account. You can get a year's worth of free credit if you're getting a personal account. And you just type in the search Cloud9. And this is what's going to come up. Create a new environment and just give it any name. We'll call this Django website. And the other thing I'm going to put on here is secure shell. Those are the only 2 changes I need to make, and it will create a development environment that looks a lot like Visual Studio Code if you're familiar with that, but it's going to be integrated with a computer that's running up in the cloud. Okay, so this takes about 20 seconds or so to create the environment. I'm going to click open there when it's ready to go. Actually, I'll go ahead and click it right now, and it's going to tell me, hey, I'm setting things up. In the meantime, let's go back to the exam question. Okay, so it says create a project called Heroes. Now, those that are taking my college course know that I have a link that says how to create a Django project with a web page from scratch. And literally in a Django project, this is the longest and hardest part of creating a Django website, is just the initial setup. So many things that you got to set up. It's kind of annoying. All right, so here is the tutorial page associated with that. And it says, assuming you have Cloud9 open, let me zoom in a little bit more. We can run a Docker command on there because it's already running, and this will download the latest version of Python. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to come back to my Cloud9 environment. There it is. I'm going to close this window. I don't need it. And then I'm going to come into the terminal, and I'm going to paste that command in. All right, it takes a few seconds, maybe 10, 15, 20 seconds. It's going to download the latest version of Python, and then my little terminal display is going to change from being logged in as a particular user on this Cloud9 environment. It's going to say root at, which means I have logged into a Docker container, which is running the latest version of Python. All right, so it says root at, I'm running the latest version of Python, and many people watching this video have seen me go through tutorials before, so I'm going to do this relatively quickly. So I come back here, it says next thing is pip install Django. All right, so I'm going to install Django. Pip install Django. I don't have to worry about case. That'll take a few seconds. Next step says Django admin, start project, and give the project a name. And it's hard to copy paste. Okay, pip is Django's installed. Checking the exam instructions. The exam instructions say the project is called Heroes. Perfect. Okay, here I go. Start project, Heroes, and it creates a little folder there. So there's kind of the project folder, and I call this basically the settings or administration folder. So they have the same name, but they have slightly different purposes. Okay, next thing says I need to create an app called Heroes app. All right, so I come back again to the instruction document. It says first I need to change my working directory into the project directory. So I go down here and I say cd heroes, and next thing I need to do is create the app. So there's that command. Heroes app. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and follow the rest of the instructions in this tutorial. Maybe I'll just move it a little closer to here so it's closer to my Cloud9 tab. So I created a project. Start it. Okay, now only when you're working in Cloud9 do I have to, if you're doing local development, you have to worry about this, but you do have to worry about some permissions and stuff when you're working on Cloud9. So I'm just saying, hey, give write permissions to me over here in this folder. So that's just what I did. So now I can start creating files and editing them. Okay, first thing it says we need to do is update the settings.py file in the what I call the administration portion of our application. And we need to add in the app that we just created from the command line. And it's application name.apps.application class. All right, so I come over to here, open up my little administration folder where the settings.py is, and I'm going to find the installed apps. And I put in here the app name that I created was heroes app.apps. And then the easiest way to remember what the last thing you put in here is to go into your app and open up apps, and there's the name. All right, don't need that again. Paste it in. All right, done with that step. Next step in the tutorial says make it so that you can visit the website when it opens up from anywhere by putting in this little star character in the settings.py. So I'm going to search around allowed hosts, so allowed visitors, everybody. I'll hit save. Next thing to do, the rest of this tutorial talks about setting up a default kind of hello world page. And remember, italics is something that you need to replace, so application name is Heroes App. So this says go into the views.py and set up this view. So I'll copy and paste that. And I'll go into the views.py of my actual app. Copy, paste. I'm going to need to make sure my indentation is right. See, it's already giving me an error message. And there is no application name folder currently set up. This actually refers to the folder that's going to be in a templates folder that we haven't created yet. So we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. So this Heroes app doesn't actually refer to this folder, weirdly. We're going to create a templates folder, and this subfolder is what it refers to. Okay, good enough. Let's go ahead and set up some of our other basics. We need a urls.py file, it says. So I come over here, and in this folder, I say new file, urls.py. All right, let's tell us to do next. We go down, and in black it says in the urls.py file, put this content in there. If I can just get my copy paste to work. There we go. And so in my urls.py, copy paste. Got to worry about that indentation. Make sure it looks good. Hit save. Okay, awesome. This means if I start a website and I don't type in anything after the main URL, it's going to try to run this function. And if I want to include in my HTML/template pages later on a link to this URL, I would refer to it by this name that's listed right there. Okay, so I have a path or a route to this function, and I have an HTML page that doesn't actually exist yet that I'm referring to. Let's see what else we're supposed to do next. All right, there's, something that we need to do here is we need to make sure that the application of the setting folders urls.py file is aware of the route that I just created, or the urls.py file that I just created. So, and again, there's an italicized area here. So I'm going to go over to copy that first, and then I'm going to go over to the application settings area, open up urls.py, and I'm going to replace this stuff down here with this new stuff. And in here, I'm going to have heroes app.urls. All right, looking good. All right, what's the next thing I need to do? It talks about you have to have a place to put your HTML files. You need a templates folder. Where does your templates folder go? If you have a project and you have a settings folder of the same name, and you have an app folder, your templates file is parallel, or folder is parallel with your app and your settings folder. So create a templates folder. All right, off we go. So I just like to collapse everything so I can see it clearly. There's my project folder, new folder, templates. All right, and if I need a reminder, I can say, hey, what do I do next? And it says, oh, you need to tell your application settings about this particular folder, and this part in black is the thing that's going to need to be changed compared to what's already in there. I'm going to try to copy that cleanly. And you do that in settings.py, so come back over to here, settings.py, come down to this templates area. So where are your HTML pages? They're going to be in this particular folder. And I'm getting a little error message saying that we don't know what the OS object is. But if we scroll down a little further, it says, hey, make sure you put import OS at the top of your settings.py program. So I come up here, and just where I'm importing other libraries, I'll put that there. All right, so my error messages should disappear momentarily. There we go. All right, now it says we need a place to put our applications templates or HTML pages. And so we just, within our templates folder, put a folder with the same name as our app. So we come over to here and, so in our templates folder, we're going to create a new folder and we'll call it Heroes App. And then the next thing it's going to tell us is put an HTML page in there. And it talks about the view function that you had earlier, had a command that looks like this. And this is the page that it's going to be referring to. So I'm just going to grab this sample HTML, could be anything. And I'm going to create an HTML page in here. Call it index.html. Open it. Copy paste. Looking good. Come back to the instructions. It says, hey, you're ready to look at your website now. So because I'm operating within a Cloud9 environment, I have to add in some of this extra notation here in the end. Technically, if you're running this locally, you don't need those extra digits. All right, so let's go ahead and come over to here and type in this run server command. Gives me a little URL. Sweet. Okay, so that is probably the hardest, as I consider it, the hardest part of setting up a Django project is getting that first hello world page. After that, you're just adding in new pages and repeating things that you've done before. Okay, so let's see what we need to do next. So we come back to the exam and we finished the first 3 lines now. Okay, next thing we need to do is we need to create the models, or essentially the database tables that will be part of this project. We will eventually populate these tables with data. And it talks about the hero class with a name and secret identity and its relationships with the superpower table and the publisher table. And as I look through these are just simple name and description tables down here. And this has a multiplicity here, a relationship with the other tables. And when that happens, it's actually easier to start with the other tables first. So I'm going to do that. I need to create a table related to each of these 2 things because that'll be the smartest thing, and then I'll do that last. Okay, because these are just simple tables with some text in it. All right, so the question is, like, how do I do that? Well, again, I don't remember these things perfectly myself, so I create little tutorials of how to create a model from scratch. And here is my model tutorial file, and mercifully, it is much shorter than the other one. So it says, first off, create a Django project, which we just did, which again, I consider the hardest part. Next thing it does is say, let's seed or set up our database. So we type in this table, or sorry, this command, and it's going to set up a table for us. It's going to allow us to have admin users in it. So step 1, okay, first I have to type Control C so I get back to the command line. And then I paste that in, migrate, and a table is set up. I'm going to then go to the next step. It says create a super user. And I'm going to go with some defaults here, just leave it empty. So it's going to be root, and then I'll set a password. It says that's a easy password. Yeah, but I'm going to throw this away later, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so I've now got a super user created. Now I'm ready to move on to the next step. It says, now for those that are taking a class with me, they know about a book that has a chapter related to creating database models in Django, and a code sample looks like this. Let me go ahead. It says open up the models.py file in your app and then use code similar to this for each of the models that you want to create. Now this particular one says employee. Now I don't have any employees, but let's go ahead and just start with that anyway. Let me clean this up a little bit for now and coming into my app, I open up models.py, and there's nothing there. Copy paste. Okay, I just messed up all of the indentation, and Python does not like that. Okay, so remember that this particular function right here says when you're in the admin area of Django, this is the text that it's going to display on the page, what you're returning right here. This is essentially the toString function of each object of type employee in this case. Okay, but what do we really need? If we come back to the exam problem, we need a superpower, and the superpower has a name and a description, and the values for name must be unique. So we're thinking of something like X-ray vision or flight. So let's go ahead then and change our code to match that. If I can find my correct window. So we have a hero name field. Oh, and look, we already have characters set up. Perfect. And we have a, I think it's hero secret name, but let me go back and double check what it says here. Secret identity name. All right, I'll change it to that. Secret identity name. And it didn't say anything about a numeric field. This one is an integer, so we're good. Now, what do I want to return and display in the interface? On the admin side of things, I would like to display the hero name and nothing else. Okay, there was one other thing that I needed to include here. It tells me in the exam problem that we need the values to be unique for my superpowers table. Now, there's a book that we're working with in my particular course, and let's see, I mentioned, hey, go look in 21.9 of the book. So we come over here and let's go to 21.9, and let's just see if there are any samples of creating models and tables based on them. And I see lots of the different parameters that can be used to create a field in the table, and I see things like default and blank and max length, but unfortunately I didn't find anything that says make it unique. All right, so let's go ahead back to the exam problem. It says make it unique. So what is it I'm trying to make unique? I need to search the web for this then. I want to find, let's see, Django, oh, there we go, model unique field. Yeah, that would be a good thing to type in. And if I type that in, it gives me a result value. And I see this example on the web. Unique equals true is one of the pairs that I can use in my code. So I'll just come over to here and I'll say unique equals true. All right, so that's one of the valid things that we're allowed to type in. Don't need that again. Awesome. Okay, I need to work on my other tables. So I've got one called publisher, and it's essentially identical. All right, so let's go and do that. Oh, I've really just messed this up, haven't I? This wasn't supposed to be employee. This is supposed to be... Oh boy, this sounds so dumb now. Okay, superpower. What in the world have I been talking about? Okay, I was supposed to do superpower, and I was going to have a name, and I was going to have a description. So I'm sorry I just messed up all that previous portion of the video. Anyway, so this is what I meant to start with. We got a superpower, the name is unique, and we want to return the name of the superpower. Okay, so if we do the same thing with our publisher, everything is identical there. It has a name and a description, and we're done. Okay, so now we need to go on to the last part. The last part says, let's create our hero class with a hero name and secret identity name, and then relationships to the other fields. So I'm going to come over to here and just copy and paste again. And we'll say hero. And I'll say hero name and secret identity. I keep forgetting that, right? Secret identity name. Secret identity name. All right. I'll leave that unique equals true. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. Next thing we're talking about here is we need a one-to-many relationship with superpower. And you know what? Actually, that's a mistake. I actually want it to be a many-to-many. And then I want a one-to-one relationship with publisher. So meaning that a superpower can belong to many, or a hero can have many different superpowers. They don't have to have just one. Okay, so we need to figure out how to do that. Now again, coming back to here, it says look at 21.9 for examples of how to do things. So one place I could go to look for examples of how to create relationships among my models and tables. And I see like right here, there's something about vacations, and there's a destination, and it's got a one-to-one field with a trip category. I see down here under customer that there's a many-to-many relationship with destination. Okay, so I've got all the examples that I need here. If I didn't have it here, I could just search on Google for how to do a Django model one-to-one or many-to-many field, and it would show me the syntax for that. So for my one-to-one field, I'm just going to copy that and bring it over. And I've got a one-to-one relationship with a publisher. And we put in the name of the publisher right here. I don't want to take the time to explain that last part. It's not important at the particular moment. All right, we need a many-to-many field. Here's one right here. And with superpower, we have a many-to-many relationship with superpower, the class that is listed right there. Okay, this looks good. Although it is complaining a little bit, we need to return something that is actually part of our hero class. One of the fields when we're looking at a list of objects of this type within the admin interface. Okay, with our definitions here set up, we're ready to actually create our tables on the back end. So I come back to this page here for setting up models, and it says we run this command, and this should be italicized right here. This is actually the name of the app, the last parameter. So I'm going to copy paste, come over to here, and this is going to prepare the SQL code for the database table creation, and it's heroes app is the name of this. And it says, hey, I've created a file with SQL statements in it. Now we need to actually run those. So migrate is going to run any database table commands that need to be run. All right, it has been created. We'd like to now interact with these tables that are in our database, and so let's see what the tutorial tells us. It says you need to make it so that your admin area is aware of the tables that you just created or the models you just created. So you go to admin.py and you make changes similar to these ones. All right, so let's go find admin.py, which is actually part of your app. It says register your models here. Okay, so first is we have to import our specific classes from our model file. So from .models, import, and I could name them one at a time, but I'll just say import all of them. Okay, next thing is admin.site.register. Maybe it's faster to type it. admin.site.register. And I'm going to need to do this 3 times because I need to do this for each of the models. So one of the models is going to be hero, one of the models is going to be publisher, and one of the models is going to be super power. And let's just make sure I've named them all correctly. Hero, publisher, and superpower. Okay, awesome. Looking good. And what else does it say? It says start your website. All right. Now, only because we're working in Cloud 9, we're going to have a little permissions error that we need to get around once again. I'll show you what I mean. So I click on this URL, and whatever your URL is, Django comes with a built-in admin site. So we go /admin. There it is, and I'll type in root, and I'll type in my password. And it's going to give me an error message only because I'm working in Cloud 9. Verification related to how you can, what websites are allowed to post, have a form that posts to the admin area for logging in. It says this CSRF verification error thing. Okay, so I've put in this little thing, hey, if you get this error, then you need to go into your settings.py and add in this line. And there's going to be a replaceable item right here. So we grab that and we go find in our settings area. I like to put this right next to my allowed hosts. All right, and I need to put in your Cloud9 website URL right here. And here on my failure page is the URL. So I copy that and come back to here, paste, save, and we should see our website reload down here. If something breaks permanently, you might have to restart your server. But otherwise, let's go ahead and reload. Do you want to repost? Yes, I do. And there we go. So here are my tables, and I can start adding data to them. I'm sure I'll need that for later on. So I'll go ahead and add DC as an example, and DC Comics. So that's a publisher. And I'll add in another, which will be Marvel, and Marvel Comics. Now, if I had read further in the exam instructions, I'm hurrying a little bit since I actually created the instructions. I might not, if I was doing this the first time through the exam, I might not know what to put in here. But yeah, as you go later in the exam, you see an example of the type of data that's supposed to be in there. A superhero with this name, with this publisher, with this list of superpowers and stuff. So there's an example of the data I need in there, and so that's how I know early on what I should be putting in there. So although it says right here at this step in the exam, and you'd be fine just going through step by step, it says just make sure you can see them in the interface. And I'm getting a little ahead of myself, and I'm going to just go ahead and add some things to it already. All right, superpowers. Let's go ahead and add in X-ray vision, and I'll just call this vision, and I'll say flight, and flight power. Good enough. Okay, so let's go ahead and give ourselves a hero now. It was important for us to create some records there first because our heroes need some properties. All right, so we come over here. We'll say something like Superman, and their identity name is Clark Kent. And who's the publisher? It's DC Comics. And a superhero is allowed to have more than one superpower, and so I'll give him both of those. And so now we're great. We have records of all three types. So let's go back to our exam. Now, no, we didn't have to do this at this point in the exam yet, but we would have eventually. So might as well get it out of the way. Okay, so we've set up a basic project. We've got some tables that have some data in there. You could probably guess that in an intro to programming class kind of situation, you're going to need to actually display some of that information on a web page at some point. So let's kind of scroll down. So it told me that I needed to create the tables and migrate, so that's what I did. All right, so I know that with a Django project, I'm always going to, when I'm visiting web pages, there's always going to be this combination of paths. Well, there's three different things to viewing a web page, right? There's going to be a path, there's going to be a method associated with that path, and then there's going to be a template or an index.html associated with it. And as I'm looking through here, I see essentially that there are four there are 4 routes slash views. And then if I go down a little further, there's 4 different templates. So related to those 3 things, at the end of the day, there's 4 web pages that need to be created, 3 things for each one. So as I'm strategizing here, I probably need to do essentially hello world for all 4 pages and then start fixing them up. But let's just start with the first one. It says we're going to need a default route to index page view. So we're told what to call our initial view function that sends back the index.html template. And this is going to have links to all the other pages. Oh, interesting. Well, what are the other pages? Well, if we come down here, we could kind of infer that there's a display and a hero and an info. And then there's, if this is the index.html page, here are the 3 other pages. So one thing we could do is just kind of jump in right now and just start typing. We could just make an educated guess. If there's links to these 3 other pages on there, let's just go ahead and do that right now. So it says we need links to all the other pages. So that's information we know for sure. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll come down to templates, index.html, and in here we'll just say href equals, and we're going to have 3 links. All right, kind of simplistic for now. And what are those pages about? Well, I need to kind of name them something, but I don't really know too much yet because I haven't done enough of the exam. But it appears that one is display, one's show hero, and one's show hero info. So I'll just put in some placeholders from now until I figure out what else is happening here. So I'll just call this display show hero info. All right, then I'm going to come back out to this default page, hit reload, and there's a few links. They're empty links, so they actually just go back to the same page right now, but good enough. We got some placeholders in place. Okay, so it says the first page was going to have just have the 3 links on there. All right, good enough. Then it says we need a route, in quotes, display that receives no parameters. So what does no parameters mean? It means that when we're typing in something in the URL, it could be just something like display. But if it had a parameter, it might be like display / record number 1 or record number 2. And this is a variable that could be used for a database lookup. But if we have no parameters, then it's just a word that is going to direct us to displaying a particular HTML page. So it says we need a display route that receives no parameters but routes to the display all page view and ends up sending back the hero table data using the display.html template. Ooh, so that's a lot of things to be thinking about. And so I need to think about adding essentially both routes in my urls.py file as well as functions, methods in my views.py file. And I could make a choice, since I know that the same thing's happening for each of these, I might just kind of go through my app and start stubbing some things out a little bit. So I could maybe just go create all of my methods first in my views.py file. So here, there's one with this name, one with this name, and one with this name. I could do that first. I could do the paths first. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and just think about stubbing out the basics of what's being explained to me here. So it says I'm going to need a page that's going to go to a display all page view. So let me go ahead and grab that. So I know that's going to need to exist eventually. So I go over to my views.py and I'm going to need that. And since I was skimming around a little bit before, I noticed that it says it's going to go to display.html. All right, so let's go ahead and just put that in there. Display. Oh, just display.html. There we go. All right, so that's a good stub for something that's going to happen later on. Now I'm sure there's some functionality here, but I don't have the information for the functionality. It just says it's going to show this web page, so I think I'm good. It says I'm going to have a hero route. Now I haven't created the path yet, but it's going to go to a show hero page view. All right, well, I could probably put that in. So let's go ahead and copy paste that. And for sure, it's going to bring up a different HTML page. So the HTML page is show_hero.html. Good enough. So I'm going to say show_hero.html. All right, go back to here. And it tells me a little bit more info about how this is going to work. It says that the hero route is going to be basically a URL that has a hero name as a parameter. So there's going to have to be at some point a / and then you put in the name of a superhero, and that's going to be used to display information in this page somehow. So we don't know everything about this quite yet, but we have an idea of how it's going to be used. But maybe there's not enough to do anything about it at this point. Now here's the last view function / route that we're learning about. There's going to be an info route that receives a hero name and a publisher as a parameter, and it's going to route to the show hero info page view. All right, and it's going to send back show hero info.html template. All right, well, we can do the same thing that we did before. We know that we're going to have a method, a function, and it's going to be named that. Oops. I did my copy and paste poorly, so let's try this again. Show hero page, show hero info page view. There we go. And the page that it's going to bring up is this one right there. Perfect. Okay, so we know what's supposed to happen. I haven't created the routes yet, but I might if I wanted to right now. But we're definitely accomplishing good things that we need as part of this exam problem. I think I'll just come back and do it later, but I very easily could right now go over to my urls.py and just add in a couple extra entries that go to this page. I'll go ahead and do that later, but I could do it now. There's something else that's bothering me, and that's that I haven't created these HTML pages yet. So let's go ahead and keep on reading through the exam. It says, make sure you have appropriately set up the routes for the application routes file. Also make sure your routes are appropriately ordered and set up as you have been taught. Okay, well, because it said that in the order of the exam, might as well just go with it, despite what I just said. So let's just kind of be real orderly and methodical in terms of what we're doing. Okay, so we're going to have to keep on referring back to that last step in the problem. So we've got a urls.py, and we're going to have a bunch of other routes. That copy and paste is a little annoying. Okay, and in order to include these things here, we're going to need to import them at the top. And let's refer to what they are. We're going to have one that's essentially display. So I'll make it so if somebody types in /display on the website, it brings up this, and this one is associated with that method. And for use in links, we will type it in like that. All right, next one. We're going to have a hero route. So I'm going to copy that. So if somebody types in /hero on our website, it's going to bring back this method. And we'll just call this one hero. And I didn't put commas at the end of these lines, so that's going to give us some issues at some point. Okay, and lastly, let's see what the last link is. There's an info route. All right, so let's go ahead and say if somebody types in info, and if I want to do a link to this page, I'm going to use this name to identify this particular path. And the method will be show hero info page. Awesome. All right, so we come back over to here. Looking good. I have not saved, so make sure I have saved. All right. Okay, moving on down. Now, some of the details of how this works has not been explained yet. It will be explained later on, but I knew enough to do all the things that I just did. It also says here, I will have 4 templates for the application, and these are the names of the web pages. And it says you'll need a my.css file in every page. Ooh, okay, well, there's definitely a few different things that need to happen here. First off, I haven't created these pages yet. So let me go ahead and create those. So I know I'm going to need a display.html. I know I'm going to need a show_hero.html. And I'm going to need a show hero info.html. Show hero info.html. Nice. All right. Okay, so those files are there, and I could put some text in there. I could test them out, but I feel pretty confident that everything's going to be working, that if you type in the right path, that it's going to go to the right view, which is going to bring up the right page, which is currently empty. But if I wanted to test it, I could just put a little info in there. But again, testing would mean that I would do something like /display, /hero, /info, and I would see different pages there. Okay, but I'll get a chance to test that later on anyway, so I don't need to just now. It says I need to include a CSS file in every page. And it says also include the reference in the base.html page and then all the other templates that will inherit from base.html. Now, these things signal to me 2 important pieces of configuration related to a Django website. It says that first off, I need to include static assets, and second off, I need to use template inheritance, and these are 2 different things. So I need to pick one of them. It doesn't matter which one I pick, but I do need to pick one of them at this point. All right, so I think I will start off with the idea of the CSS file. So here is the CSS I'm going to need, but where do I put this file with this text in it? Real good question. One thing I happen to be aware of is that there is a book which has a chapter on HTML, CSS, and forms as it relates to putting these in a Django website. And I actually don't think that's the right place that I want to look. Hold on, I apologize. I'm going to be, oh, here we go. Templates, render in H. Okay. So I happen to know of a chapter that's out there on the web. I could have just searched for include CSS in an or other static assets into a Django website, and I would get back a link that is something like this. This particular book, online book, just happens to have instructions on what to do, and it says you need to create a common folder that contains the settings.py file called static. Okay, so I'm trying to get my bearings here. So on the same level as what should be my, let's just see what this is next to. So we've got settings.py. So in the same folder as your settings.py, I want to create a static folder. So that's the first step. Okay, so for us, We come here, and in this folder we have our settings.py, so we right click, new folder, static. If I can, that's awfully small text, it's hard to see. All right, it says create a folder there called static, and then you would create other subfolders like CSS. All right, it says that there should be an attribute in your settings.py file that talks about this particular folder. All right, well, let's investigate those items. Well, first off, since you're supposed to put the other folders there, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to do right click, new folder, CSS, and I actually know enough already that I could put this file in there. So I'm going to create my file and put it in there. So it's going to be called mycss.css. Copy that info, come over to here, right click, new file, mycss.css. All right, double click, paste, and even though the formatting is kind of yucky, I'm pretty sure that's going to work because this isn't like Python where the tabs matter. This should be just fine. The curly braces are going to save our day, just like in traditional C-based programming languages. Okay, let's come back to our little tutorial here. It says that we need settings.py file to look like this. And this is actually your project administration name folder. So, or administration folder name, the one with settings.py in it. So let's go over to settings.py and see what we've got. So we come over here, and in this same folder, settings.py, let's see if we see anything about paths anywhere in here already. Aha, there's that static URL. All right, so what is it we need to do? We need to have all of this content. So copy, paste. And I know I've duplicated part of this. Shift tab to move that back in. Okay, I don't need that one. That's listed twice. This stuff looks good. This looks good. This, however, it should refer to this particular folder that we're working in. And I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Nice. Okay, let's come back over to here. And it says you want to run this command, python manage.py collect static. There we go. And anything else? I think we're good to go at this point. Now I was talking here about, in this chapter about adding in Bootstrap, et cetera, let's not go to that level. Okay, it does talk about then how you would refer to a style sheet in your page. So if you have a web page, it says put this at the top of your template, this little command. So I come over to here, and let's find one of my web pages. Let me close some things up a little here. Here's my index.html. So at the top of this, I paste that command, and then in order to include a style sheet, it would look something like this. So link href relationship equals style sheet, and then this special template syntax saying look in the static folder, in the CSS folder, and then the name of that file. All right, so we copy and we come over here into our head tag within HTML. I'll tab it out just so it looks a little better. Now, my particular style sheet is not called styles.css, called mycss.css. All right, let's cross our fingers that this is going to work. We come over to here and we reload the page. Oh, and it says nothing's running. Why is that? Because I'm going to press up on my arrow key a couple times, restart the server, reload, and let's just make sure that everything's, well, actually, let's just refer to our CSS page for a second here. So I don't see any changes at this point. Let me just view the source code. Looks like the link got included, which is a nice thing. But let's also then give ourselves a chance to apply that CSS file. So it says it's going to style anything that's in an H1. Actually, we've got a div tag that makes things green. All right, let's just for giggles make ourselves so that we can see that. So I'll say like right here, just div, end div, save, come back out, reload the page. There we go. Well, it's not green, but maybe if I put some more text in there, we can see the green. I'll say, here is some text. So it's the link text that's overwriting the color there. But the good news is that the style sheet is working here. Okay, whew, that was a lot of work. So basically it said, make sure you have my CSS on every page. All right, we'll worry about that a little bit later. But there was a lot of work to reference how to do adding CSS static files like CSS into a page, but we accomplished one task. The next thing it says here is make sure the reference to your CSS file is included in the base.html, and then all other templates will inherit from base.html. So when I hear that, I'm like, oh, you're talking about inheriting. You're talking about template inheritance. And so this is nice. It means that we don't want to have the same headers on every single page. We want to use this thing where we just have like a line of code that says include the header, include the thing that's specific to that page, and then include the footer, and then you're done. That's kind of like the high level idea. Okay, so how do we do that exactly? All right, so we have to look up how to do template inheritance on the web, and I happen to know that somewhere in this particular book, aha, here it is, template inheritance is an example. Again, I could find this in other places. So this is what we want to set up. We want to make it so there's a block of HTML that's basically our base.html, and it's going to have all this good stuff in it. And then here's where the actual content for each page shows up. And every single page outside of this is identical. And so there's kind of the description of how it works. Okay, we need a base.html page, and if we read this carefully, it tells us where to put that base.html page, and we can just put it at the root of our templates folder. Okay, so let me come back to here, and I'm going to come over to templates, and I'm going to say new file, base.html, and I'll double click on there, and let me just grab the content from my index.html page. And so technically I want to replace everything that's in here every time, but this stuff will remain the same. Okay, there'll be more updates to make, but this is a good start. Let's see, we need to orient ourselves here. Okay, I need to include that index.html page, and it says in order to do that, we need to have a little section in there that says block content end block. All right, so right in here, this is where each of my 4 pages are going to put their content. Let's come back to this again. Here's some example, and then here's how it shows the example of how you actually implement a page. So at the top, you put extends base.html. So we come back over to here. So let's go to our index.html page. It doesn't need to include all this stuff anymore. We say we're going to be extending this page. And here's the block content, is what they call it. Block content, end block. Perfect. So we hit save. All right, let me just put a little 2 on here. See if this is going to work. Come out over to this page, hit reload. And something broke. Did something wrong. Block content. Here's a so it says it included that. Block content index.html. Should have looked good. All right, well, I'm going to have to stop and debug this.